Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to What's on the Playlist today. Today, I would like to talk about a friendly desert community where the sun is hot, the moon is beautiful, and mysterious lights pass overhead while we all pretend to sleep. Welcome to Nightvale. Ah, so bit of a sidestep. Welcome to Nightvale is a podcast on various streaming services. You can even get it on YouTube. Which was created in 2012 by Joseph Kramer and Jeffrey Fink. Um, and it has over 285 episodes now. Whew. Man, that's a lot. It's been going on for a very long time. And it is about the community of Nightvale. It is a mock community radio program from a small community, Nightvale, a small town in the desert of no specified location. And showing my age, this is my reference to it is what if Prairie Home Companion met Twilight Zone? But I realize a lot of younger people, like my kids' generation, would not know anything what that means. I'm trying to find a modern way to describe it, and I'm not sure I can. But it is a small town community radio where a fictional town, fictional radio broadcast that takes place in a community where lots of horrifying and weird things happen. It is done in a dark comedy sense. We hear the voice of Cecil, who is the broadcaster, the main voice of the Nightvale radio station. And he gives us the details of his community. He talks about traffic, he talks about the station management, about the dog park, about librarians, about various community activities, local restaurants, local small town sporting events. But Nightvale is a Twilight Zone-esque community. It is a home of Lovecraftian horrors, things that would drive you mad. There are the hooded figures in the dog park. There are the unknowable and horrifying creatures that are station management. There is a vague yet menacing government agency. There is the sheriff's secret police. There is the faceless old woman who secretly lives in your home. In and amongst the other things of Nightvale, such as librarians and street cleaning day, and the glow cloud. All hail the glow cloud. But what makes this show so interesting is that Cecil and the residents of Nightvale treat all these mind-screeching horrors as though they were mundane. That doesn't mean they're not mind-screeching horrors. But, you have to expect people to be abducted by secret police, or devoured by faceless entities, or vaporized, by mysterious beams of light. These things just sort of happen in a small desert community such as Nightvale. It's the sort of thing that everyone expects to happen. So, while the station intern may be eviscerated by station management, to the parents of Chad the intern, he will be missed. And these are just the things that happen. And what also makes it interesting is that things that would ordinarily be normal, those things horrify the citizens of Nightvale. Things like libraries and librarians and the post office and mountains and lighthouses and angels, which you are not allowed to know and cannot know anything about angels because they do not exist. So, it is just this weirdly dark amusing and horrifying at the same time community broadcast. The episodes run between 20 and 40 minutes long. And I fell in love instantly. My youngest actually introduced this to me. I was actually here in front of my computer playing video games. They came in here and said, "Dad, you have to listen to this." And they put their headphones on. They put their headphones on my head and hit play. And it's like, where has this been all my life? But this was in 2012 and it was still brand new. And the two of us would, like, I would be taking them to their piano lessons, and we would listen to it in the car on the drive there, as our weekly thing until we got caught up. And then once episodes come out every other week, every 2 weeks an episode comes out. So there's around 24 or so episodes a year. And I have taken my youngest to also, they do some live shows. They've done, I think, a total of 9 live shows. Every couple of years they do like a nationwide tour, and they perform the program on stage. But the great thing is that they don't do anything but read. They have the script in their hand. They read the script out loud. They're in front of a microphone. There is no other props or sets, maybe some sound effects, but we are there watching them basically do a radio broadcast. It is radio to your face, and it's great. But there are a couple things too that make this show special. One, it's Cecil's voice. In the first several episodes, we hear no one but Cecil. Other characters and their voices are slowly introduced. We are introduced to Hiram McDaniels, a literal 5-headed dragon, Steve Carlsberg, and some other characters too. The faceless old woman who secretly lives in your home is eventually given a voice. I think she's voiced by Mara Wilson, who was the actress who was in Matilda, and also she played the littlest daughter in Mrs. Doubtfire. She has retired from acting, but she does well. She has a voice in Welcome to Nightvale. There are other characters too, but so Cecil's voice. He has a very distinct way of speaking. He has a somewhat clipped and odd rhythm that he speaks to. He has an odd cadence that is very, very distinct and individual. And some of the characters in the show have the same thing. There is Nightvale has a rival with a nearby community called Desert Bluffs. They have their own radio broadcaster named Kevin. And Kevin also has a very distinct way of speaking. I actually heard the voice actor, the person who does Kevin, do announcing somewhere else. I was out wandering around like in Massachusetts, and I heard his voice over the speakers. I was at a convention and he was doing the announcements for the convention. I was like, it's Kevin. I was so excited. What else can I say about this bizarre show? Will Wheaton actually voices one of the characters. He eventually was brought in, I think, season 3 or 4, maybe later. Those are the only 2 well-known people I know who do voices on Nightvale. What else can I say about this program? When Jeffrey Craner and Joseph Fink were creating the program, they wanted to create the story, a town where all the conspiracy theories are true, which they have done. All kinds of conspiracy theories. It's all bizarre. Another thing about the original creation of a show is that they didn't give Cecil a lot of direction. The actor who portrays Cecil is also named Cecil. I don't remember if that was intentional. I think if they had named him Cecil originally and they just happened to get a guy named Cecil, or if they just gave it to him and then named him Cecil after he started recording the voices. But they didn't give him a lot of direction. They just sent him a script. And this was back in 2012, before Zoom meetings were a thing. He would essentially record his lines on whatever medium he would send them on, and then send them up back to Joseph and Jeffrey with, like I said, no direction. He just made up Cecil's character on the spot. when they sent him the script, when they hired him and stuff, they had no idea what he was going to do. And some of the things with some of Cecil's inclinations going forward are things that that Cecil kind of brought to the voice actor brought to the character of Cecil, and then the writers just kind of went with. They liked what he did. They just went with the story. A couple other things that there are certain things that they do vocally or not or written. Characters are always addressed by their full name and description. For example, Hiram McDaniels, a literal five-headed dragon. That is always how he is referred to. He is never simply referred to as Hiram McDaniels. He is always referred to as Hiram McDaniels, a literal five-headed dragon. Old Woman Josie, out behind the car lot. Jordan Peters, the farmer. He is always referred to as Jordan Peters, the farmer. The faceless old woman who secretly lives in your home always has that full address. All the characters in Nightvale are always given their full address. They are never shortened. It is always their full address. Regardless of the circumstances or situation, every character gets their full address. The series also is continuous. And what I mean by that is if something happens in the first or second episode, it stays in the storyline. This is a continuous story over 285 episodes. It's not like an episodic show like you see on television where they just completely ignore what happened last episode and tell an entirely new story. No, this is a fully contained dialogue. If a character dies, he stays dead. Or, well, he may be resurrected or his ghost may haunt something, but it happens. Something that happens stays happening. Stays to have happened. However you want to phrase that. Things that are mentioned like in episode 5 or 6 are referenced again like 20, 30 episodes later as something that was happened and referenced to. So I really like that aspect of it too. There are so many neat little things in this weird, bizarre little show that has been going on for so long, it's no longer a little show. The year it came out, it was the most downloaded podcast ever. And I don't know if it held that way, but it was really, really popular for 2012 and 2013. Any other things I can say about it? There's got to be tons of things I could say about this. I know that people have done like analysis of the show and the psychology behind it, and the psychology of the writers, and I know the authors have also put out some actual novels about Nightvale. I will say that I don't listen to it as diligently as I used to. The first 2 years it was out, I listened completely through the entire thing until I was caught up, which didn't take long. And then every other week, I listened to an episode, and I kept that up for a couple of years, and then I kind of fell off. One of the things that kind of turned me off later on in the series was that they started explaining things. One of the things I loved about it was the mystery. The man in the tan, the man in the tan jacket with a deerskin briefcase who only sells flies. Who was he? Where did he come from? What was his name? No one knew. They started, how did Nightvale get the way it is? Where did they come from? Where did certain things come from? Where did certain things originate from? There was this huge unknown mystery to everything. And then they started explaining some things. And I just didn't enjoy that as much. I loved the unknown aspect of the program. And when they started explaining things, it kind of killed the mystery. I preferred it when things were just bizarre and off the wall for no reason. That doesn't mean it's not still as well written. It just personally, for me, kind of killed the vibe. I do still listen to it. I will go back and, just binge a ton of episodes at a time and then not listen to it for like 6 or 8 months. So I do still love it. And as you can tell from my enthusiasm, I still love it a lot. But like I said, I'm not as diligent about listening to it as I was the first couple of years. Um, it may be a bit, given that it's got 285 episodes, it may feel daunting to get into for someone who's never listened to it before. But like the episodes are only like 20. The first, certainly the first year, the episodes are very short. And if this kind of bizarre, weird thing sounds interesting to you, it's worth starting from beginning. Um, Especially, as I said, the early episodes are much shorter. It's much easier to get into, as it allows you to get a feel for whether or not you're going to want to invest your time in it. I wouldn't, like I said, it's on YouTube. It's free. It's easy. Just type in Nightvale pilot episode or episode 1 and just play it for 20 minutes. If you love it, like I do, it's not overly complicated. So it may be, like I said, a full story, but Cecil really brings it along. He speaks well. I love the actor's voice. I love his enthusiasm for Nightvale, his blasé attitude towards the horrific. So, if this type of weirdness seems interesting to you, I would definitely recommend listening to Welcome to Nightvale. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting. Or good night, dear listeners. Good night.